Over the years, League of Legends history has seen extreme metas.
Jumps in with a flash ulti, but Carter's already taken out Prey. Flash rolls, double kill there from Gameplay. Gonna keep running, Kuro's forced to flash out.
Ones that have led to champions being perma-banned, juggernauts stat-checking entire teams, ADCs becoming raid bosses by 15 minutes off a single support item, and even minions taking over the game. Certain metas in League of Legends have been so strong that they rewrote the whole rules of the game. All of these metas and many others threw solo queue into a frustrating twirl and made professional play linear, predictable, and boring. So in this video, we will be diving into some unique chapters in League's history, eras where balance went out the window, creativity became chaos, and entire strategies revolved around one champion, item, or cannon minion. Strap in as we revisit the entire history of League of Legends metas. Few champions have been so broken that they defined an entire meta. That changed between late 2013 in Season 3 and patch 4.4 that debuted in February the 27th, 2014, when no champion was as universally feared as Kassadin. At the time, he wasn't just overpowered, he broke the game. What made Kassadin so dominant was his ultimate, Rift Walk, a low cooldown blink that stacked damage with each cast. At rank 3, it had a 6-second base cooldown, which could be reduced further with items. By the third consecutive cast, it could deal 800 plus bonus magic damage, allowing Kassadin to one-shot squishies and blink over walls indefinitely. For reference, most mages in early 2014 had around 1800 HP, which meant late-game Kassadin could delete them with just his ult. His Q, Null Sphere, was equally oppressive. Not only did it deal damage, but it silenced for up to 2.6 seconds, completely shutting down enemy mages like Orianna, Syndra, and LeBlanc. On top of this, Kassadin's passive, Voidstone, granted 15% reduced magic damage, making him tanky against AP threats, allowing him to be very durable in lane. During this period, Kassadin's only real weakness was his early game, but by level 6, he became unstoppable. At first, people thought his weak laning would balance him a bit, but as soon as Season 3 went on, players figured out the perfect strategy. Play extremely safe and don't interact with anyone. Buy a Tear of the Goddess, transform it into an Archangel's Staff, and buy Rod of Ages. These items scaled over time, giving Kassadin absurd mana, AP, and health, turning him into an unstoppable late-game nightmare. In professional play, Kassadin wasn't just frequently banned, he was erased and was almost never seen. At the 2013 OGN Winter Finals that was played in January 2014, Samsung Galaxy Ozone made the mistake of leaving Kassadin open against Faker's SKT T1. Faker locked him in and proceeded to 1v9, proving that even the best teams couldn't stop him. From that moment on, no team dared to leave Kassadin unbanned. His 99% ban rate in pro play remains a record to this day. By the end of Season 3 in November 2013, Kassadin's win rate surpassed 60% in games lasting over 30 minutes. In Ranked, his ban rate skyrocketed to 90%, making him the most banned champion in League history. In solo queue lobbies, if Kassadin wasn't banned, players would rage, dodge, or ask to surrender immediately after the 20th minute mark. Before patch 4.4 in February 2014, Riot tried multiple nerfs, reducing his base stats, increasing Rift Walk's mana cost, and tweaking his silence duration. But none of it worked. Players adapted, played even safer early, and continued steamrolling games. Finally, on February the 27th, 2014, on patch 4.4, Riot started with the nerfs. First, they removed the silence from his Q, and one patch later, they capped Rift Walk's damage and reworked his kit. The perma-ban era ended, but Kassadin's legacy as one of the most broken champions ever was cemented. Veterans still remember the months of terror when Kassadin defined the meta, and his reign is still referenced in discussions about the most overpowered champions of all time. But as history would show, Riot did not learn their lesson. While the Kassadin nightmare ended, another equally oppressive era was about to begin. This time, it wasn't just one champion, it was an entire horde, the Juggernauts. If Kassadin's reign in 2013 to 2014 showed Riot the dangers of a single overpowered champion, the Juggernaut patch patch in August 2015 proved that overhauling an entire class could throw the game into complete chaos. At the time, Riot aimed to revive forgotten bruisers like Darius, Garen, Mordekaiser, and Skarner. But instead, they unleashed 4 unstoppable raid bosses who turned League into a stat-check nightmare. In the early days following the patch, the juggernauts weren't just strong, they were unkillable monsters. Their reworked kits weren't the only problem. During its most dominant phase, their inflated base stats, overloaded abilities, and synergy with new item builds made them nearly impossible to counter. Riot overcompensated for their lack of mobility by giving them absurd damage, sustain, and scaling, turning them into walking stat sticks that destroyed everything in their path. Darius, who was a niche lane pick, became a teamfight terror overnight. His ultimate, Noxian Guillotine, now reset on kill, letting him chain execute entire teams with over 1,000 true damage per strike. By the end of Season 5, it became common to see Darius players miss every ability and still win fights just by right-clicking and pressing R. Paired with Black Cleaver and Deadman's Plate, he became nearly unstoppable. Mordekaiser broke the game's fundamental rules. His new ultimate, Children of the Grave, allowed him to claim the soul of a slain dragon as a controllable pet. Within the first few weeks of the patch, Mordekaiser's Dragon Ghost became the most broken mechanic in League, allowing teams to melt towers in seconds. He was played bot alongside a support, which allowed him to scale safely, take the dragon, and dominate the map. Skarner's rework turned the entire jungle into his personal kingdom. His passive Crystal Spires created zones in his jungle that granted insane movement speed, attack speed, and mana regen. Right after the patch, Skarner with Trinity Force and Sterak's Gauge became an unstoppable monster that could solo Baron early and eliminate carries in an instant. If you dared contest his jungle, you were deleted, and if you ignored him, he scaled into an unkillable raid boss. Garen, who had always been marketed as a beginner-friendly pick, became a serious competitive menace. His reworked ultimate, Demacian Justice, now marked the enemy with the most kills as the villain, dealing 25% of their max HP as true damage. During its peak, a full tank Garen could spin through teams with his E, burning enemies with Sunfire Cape, and instantly executing fed carries with his ultimate. In this period, solo queue descended into complete anarchy. By September 2015, players abused the ridiculous item combos that made the Juggernauts even stronger. Sterak's Gauge on Darius and Garen, Trinity Force on Skarner, Rylai's Crystal Scepter on Mordekaiser made them impossible to play against. Competitive play became a nightmare. During the 2015 World Championship, teams burned all 3 bans just to remove 3 of Darius, Mordekaiser, Skarner, and Garen from play. When one of them slipped through, the game became a stomp. Maybe the most memorable example of this was at the 2015 World Championship. Teams like Fnatic built entire strategies around Mordekaiser's Dragon Ghost, brute-forcing objectives while opponents scrambled to respond. Just before the end of the season, Riot pushed to patch the chaos. By October 2015, they nerfed Darius' base AD and ultimate damage, Mordekaiser's Dragon Ghost duration and damage, and in his 2019 rework they totally removed it. They nerfed Skarner's Spire buffs and Garen's base stats and villain mechanic. But even after the nerfs, the Juggernaut patch became one of the most infamous updates in League history. A cautionary tale of what happens when Riot fixes what wasn't broken. If you played League of Legends in Season 7, you probably vividly remember the atrocity that was the Ardent Censor meta. While many metas came and went, this one was probably the most boring and annoying to both play in solo queue and watch in professional play. Between January and October 2017, the game revolved around one goal: buff and peel the ADC and let them 1v9. This era, peaking during the 2017 World Championship, turned Enchanter supports into game-breaking machines and ADCs into unkillable raid bosses, all thanks to a single 2,300 gold item. The chaos began in patch 7.2, January 2017, when Riot buffed the support item Ardent Censor, allowing enchanters, whenever they shielded or healed an ally, to grant them 20 to 35% attack speed and on-hit magic damage with healing. At first, the change was overlooked, but by mid-2017, players realized it wasn't just strong, it was game-defining. By patch 7.19, September 2017, which was the World's patch, it became a mandatory first item for supports, warping the entire meta. During its peak, champions like Lulu, Janna, Soraka, and Sona dominated. Pro teams funneled all their resources into bot lane, knowing that a 15-minute Ardent Sensor meant guaranteed teamfight dominance. ADCs like Kog'Maw, Varus, Twitch, Tristana, and Vayne became nearly invincible, shredding entire teams while constantly healing off their own autos. Ardent Sensor had insane synergy with some ADC items as well, such as Runaan's Hurricane, where the item's on-hit healing applied to 3 different targets at once. Guinsoo's doubled the on-hit damage and made the on-hit healing more consistent and stronger. This resulted in a fed Kog'Maw being able to tank damage like a Mundo while out-healing burst damage just by standing still, right-clicking, and killing everyone in the process. And because of Ardent's free lifesteal effect, ADCs no longer needed to build lifesteal items. They went straight into damage, attack speed, or tankier options like Guardian Angel, Ninja's Tabi, and even Randuin's Omen. But the true breaking point came when pro teams started running 2 enchanters per team. Teams like Samsung Galaxy and Team WE, for example, ran Lulu or Karma mid and Janna support, stacking double Ardent Sensor buffs on their ADCs. A Twitch with 2 Ardent buffs hit 3 attack speed before even using his ult, melting Baron in seconds. By Worlds 2017, the meta had reached its absolute worst. Every game followed the same 4-step formula. 1. Draft Enchanter support and hypercarry ADC. 2. Jungler camps bot lane to accelerate Ardent power spike. 3. Game stalls to 40+ minutes while ADC farms for 6 items. 4. Whoever's ADC gets more shields wins. This led to some of the most boring pro matches in history. The 2017 Worlds Finals between Samsung Galaxy and SKT-T1 devolved into Peel Ruler versus Peel Bang. The casters even joked that Ardent Sensor itself deserved the MVP award. For most of Season 7, solo queue was a disaster. Supports who rushed Ardent Sensor could go 0 and 10 and still carry the game just by pressing E on their ADC. Meanwhile, engaged supports like Thresh, Blitzcrank, and Leona became completely unplayable. Even auto-filled support players could climb just by spamming Lulu, Janna, Soraka, or Sona and mashing their heals and shields on the ADC. In many instances, lower-skilled players abused this mechanic to inflate their elo. It didn't matter if they had 0 mechanics, as long as they built Ardent Sensor first, they won. At first, Riot tried small nerfs, but they were insignificant. Finally, by patch 7.19 in September 2017, Riot gutted Ardent Sensor. The attack speed bonus was slashed, on-hit healing was significantly reduced, and the mana regen and AP were completely removed. This effectively ended the Ardent Sensor meta, but not before it ruined an entire World Championship. After its nerf, Ardent Sensor changed how supports were viewed forever. No longer just ward bots, they became game-deciding playmakers, as long as they built the right items. And while enchanters were never quite as dominant again, Riot never forgot the chaos of 2017. Every support item since then has been carefully balanced to avoid another Ardent Sensor disaster. But literally in the same year, another frustrating and broken item got buffed to a meta-defining power. Between 2017 and 2018, players faced an entirely different kind of terror, one that didn't need to fight you to win. This meta wasn't about champions, it was about a single cannon minion. At first, Banner of Command was just a forgotten support item, but in patch 7.12, Riot reworked it into an unstoppable split-pushing tool. They lowered the cost to only 2,200 gold, added some more base stats to suit tankier champions, and the item allowed for players to promote a minion. This promotion gave the minion a buff and made it immune to magic damage, doubling its attack power and giving it tank stats that made killing it a nightmare. In combination to another forgotten item like Xerath Portal, as well as with Baron buff, this minion could solo towers, push lanes unattended, and even threaten the Nexus while the enemy team was forced to respond. The true chaos began in patch 8.11 in May 2018, when the item went through some changes and players realized just how broken Banner really was. While Riot removed the magic immunity, they also buffed the item, allowing the promoted minion to take 70% reduced damage to champions and do 100% bonus damage to turrets. Supports became minion shepherds, sending their chosen one down a lane while their team stalled for Baron. Mid laners like Malzahar and Morgana shoved waves while promoting cannon minions, turning macro play into a literal point-and-click strategy game. The top laners, like Singed and Sion, paired Banner with Rewrote Portal, creating a wave of unkillable pressure that forced enemy teams to pick between losing Baron or losing their base. During its peak, MSI 2018 showcased the absurdity of the meta. Fnatic's Bwipo played Singed with Banner and Rewrote, memeing his way through matches while casters joked about the promoted minion MVP. Teams like Cloud9 and Echo Fox drafted double AD comps just to counter the meta. In solo queue, chaos reigned. Low elo players ignored the glowing siege minion until it was casually knocking on their Nexus's turrets. Top laners built Banner and Rewrote, roamed the map, and left minions to win the game for them. Malzahar's win rate spiked by 7% globally, not because he was stronger, but because his Voidlings tanked tower shots for the Banner minion, enabling dives with zero mechanics required. Over the course of 2 months, the game became unbearable. While Riot tried nerfing the item, its power persisted. Finally, in June 2018, in patch 8.13, Riot removed Banner of Command entirely, calling it anti-fun and unhealthy for strategic diversity. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The Banner of Command era left scars. It became a cautionary tale about unintended item synergies and the dangers of making minions too strong. Ever since its removal, Riot has been extremely careful with split-pushing items like Hullbreaker, ensuring nothing ever reaches Banner's level of absurdity again. While these are just 4 metas that we thought are truly unforgettable, Riot delivered a lot more when it came to absurd metas in this game. That is why we had to include an honourable mentions list, starting with, of course, the infamous AP Master Yi in Season 3. During this period, Master Yi's Q, Alpha Strike, and Meditate, W, scaled insanely with AP, turning him into a reset machine. A single Q could wipe squishies, while Meditate healed him to full mid-fight. AP Yi terrorized low elo games, snowballing pentakills off one misstep. Riot axed the AP ratios in his 2013 rework, but veterans still remember the memory of untargetable, full heal Yi dominating teamfights with zero counterplay, a playstyle that defined the meta at that time. Next up on the honourable mentions list, we have the tank assassin meta in Season 6, which revolved around assassins buying Sunfire Cape and Iceborne Gauntlet or other tank items. The tank assassin meta emerged when bruiser tank items synergized too well with assassin's base damage. Champions like Tank Akali, Tank Fizz, and Tank Echo became unkillable duelists who could dive backlines, survive burst, and still one-shot carries. Riot eventually nerfed key items to stop this hybrid playstyle, but not before it warped solo queue into a frustrating dive and survive fiesta. Last on the honourable mentions list is the funnel meta in Season 8, and the rise of funnel comps broke the game's core roles. This strategy mainly was combining Master Yi and Taric, where the Taric was played mid, but his only goal was to funnel gold onto Yi. This was truly an absurd time, as Yi would power farm his camps, go mid, clear 2 waves and go back to farming, and in the late game have 2 to 3 items and level advantage, on top of the support from Taric, and completely take over the game. Eventually, this strategy was nerfed as they made junglers unable to farm from other lanes by capping the gold they can get from lane minions. And there you have it, the metas that turned League into a playground of pandemonium. Let us know what was your most traumatic meta in League of Legends. Was it Kassadin blinking out of reality, Darius dunking entire teams, or a literal minion ending the game? Is it one of the honourable mentions, or a totally different one? Whatever your answer is, what those eras prove is that no champion or item is safe from tipping the scales into madness.